Not much was done to find a 14-year-old who was known to be a runaway when she disappeared. She was kept in a small bedroom across town from her parents for the next decade. Listen to the story of a teenage girl who had to save herself from an unimaginable evil. In 1995, at the age of 14, Tanya Koch struggled to adapt to the small city of McKeesport in Pennsylvania and its Cornell Middle School after she had recently relocated there with her father. Living with her father and his new fiancée, she struggled to make friends. Battling bullying, she often skipped classes, which led to resentment towards her father for the move. She engaged in rebellious behavior, such as drinking, smoking cigarettes and weed, and even running away multiple times. Unfortunately, her parents were also grappling with their struggles, resulting in a difficult divorce. As many know, divorce takes its toll, not just on the adults involved, but also on the children caught in the crossfire. Tanya, seeking solace during these turbulent times, found herself at Cornell Middle School in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. However, this very place, meant to be a haven, would soon become the stage for a horrific event. On February 10th, 1996, her parents noticed her absence along with her belongings. They initially hoped for a quick return, but reported her missing to the police after 4 days, when concerns grew beyond typical teenage rebellion. After searching her room, they discovered a letter from a man who demanded oral sex from the teenager. The man was identified as Kevin Churchfield by the police. Surprisingly, Tanya had already reported him to the authorities. He was charged, but Tanya's absence at the trial led to the case being dropped, raising suspicions about her disappearance coinciding with the trial. Shockingly, it became evident that Churchfield had no connection to her vanishing. A few weeks later, Tanya's stepmother found her diary, revealing Tom, a 38-year-old security guard at her middle school, who sympathized with Tanya's situation. Despite her crush on him and a letter she wrote, he promptly reported it to the school and was cleared as a suspect. Tanya's image circulated widely through the media, leading her parents to believe she had willingly run away. Eventually, the police received a tip to revisit Tom's residence. This is the tale of Tanya Nicole Koch, an 8th grader whose resilience shone brightly in the face of unimaginable darkness. Tanya, born on October 14, 1981 in Pennsylvania, navigated a challenging home life. The bond with her parents was strained, leading to occasional runaways that always ended with her return. Tanya Nicole Koch was an 8th grader. Her home life was a tempestuous sea, fraught with instability and a sense of disconnection from her family. She sought solace and found an unexpected haven, or so she thought, in the arms of Thomas Hosey, a seemingly friendly 38-year-old security guard at the school. Their connection began innocently enough, with casual conversations and a shared sense of connection. However, the power dynamics were deeply imbalanced. Thomas, who was an adult security guard at the school, used his position to manipulate Tanya and occasionally take her out of class under the guise of friendship. Tanya, who had been starved of attention at home, felt a rare opportunity to be seen and valued. Thomas played the part of the attentive confidant and offered a listening ear, including the occasional bribe of candy or cigarettes. This skewed dynamic, coupled with Thomas's age and Tanya's vulnerability, enabled an inappropriate emotional attachment. The line between friendship and manipulation blurred further when Thomas crossed a boundary. He initiated a kiss, an act that was not only inappropriate but blatantly predatory. Despite the red flags, Tanya's emotional vulnerability and lack of a support system at home may have made it difficult for her to recognize the manipulative tactics at play. Sadly, the inappropriate actions continued into a relationship completely devoid of true consent due to the vast age difference and power imbalance. Thomas, preying on Tanya's vulnerabilities, convinced her to run away from her unstable home life and start a new one with him. This would be a decision that would have devastating consequences. On February 10, 1996, she ran away, leaving a void in her family's life. However, the escape she envisioned turned into a harrowing trial. Instead of finding freedom, Tanya became Thomas's prisoner. He isolated her in a secluded second-story bedroom of his home, unknown to his family who resided on the same premises. Her pleas for release were met with chilling threats of violence, which silenced her hope and forced her into a life of fear and isolation. Thomas's careful control extended to even the most basic aspects of her existence. She was confined to the room and was forced to use a rudimentary bucket for sanitation and granted showers only once or twice a week when the rest of the household was sleeping. Even the sounds of her own movement were meticulously controlled, as she was instructed to memorize the floorboards to avoid creating any telltale creaks that might expose her hidden presence. Her life, once filled with the uncertainty of a troubled home, had become a living hell, trapped within the confines of a silent prison. 4 agonizing years turned into a blurred reality for Tanya. Confined within the walls of Thomas's house, she became a prisoner in her own right. The outside world, with its familiar streets and loved ones just 2 miles away, remained tantalizingly close, yet impossibly distant. All contact with the world beyond Thomas was severed. Conversations, laughter, and even the most basic human interactions became forbidden luxuries. Thomas was empowered by Tanya's isolation and vulnerability, and subjected her to unimaginable exploitation. His manipulative tactics escalated into horrific abuse and left Tanya feeling utterly controlled and powerless. Thomas asserted ownership over her, using threats of violence to remind her of the fragility of her existence. Under his influence, Tanya's reality distorted as he convinced her that she was alone, unwanted by anyone else, and entirely reliant on him. A cruel turn of events unfolded on Tanya's 18th birthday. Despite being granted some freedom, it was heavily regulated by curfews and restricted areas, which allowed manipulation to persist. Thomas created a new identity for her and presented her to his unsuspecting family as Nikki Diane Allen, a recent arrival. Years of captivity had weakened Tanya, making her susceptible to Thomas's ongoing influence. Sadly, he managed to distort her reality and portrayed himself as her only source of support, distorting her perception of the love and support outside his grasp. Despite the limited freedom outside the house, exposure to the world beyond her confinement began to chip away at the fabricated reality Thomas had created. Tanya, slowly reconnecting with the outside world, started to recognize the true darkness of her situation. One familiar face, Joe Sparico, the owner of JJ's Deli Mart, located near Thomas's house, became a beacon of hope in this story. For 8 months, a quiet bond developed between Tanya and Joe and his family. She confided in Joe's wife, Janet, about running away after her parents' separation and having developed a crush on Thomas, who offered her a place to stay. However, she remained guarded and hesitant to share the full extent of her ordeal. The turning point arrived in March of 2006. During a routine visit to the store, the weight of years of captivity and manipulation finally overwhelmed Tanya. Unable to bear the burden any longer, she broke down in front of Joe and revealed the harrowing truth about her imprisonment at the hands of Thomas. This moment marked the beginning of her journey towards reclaiming her life and seeking the justice she deserved. She confessed that Nikki Allen was a fabrication and her real name was Tanya Koch, and she had been held captive by Thomas since the age of 14. The weight of her revelation was palpable, her voice trembling with fear of disbelief and retribution. The chilling thought of Thomas discovering her escape and unleashing his wrath fueled her terror. She referenced missing children's posters and clung to the hope that her image might still be out there. She implored Joe to call the police and raid Thomas's house and witness the horrifying reality she had endured. The gravity of her confession hit Joe like a physical blow. Joe knew immediate action was necessary. He contacted the Center for Missing Children, and they confirmed the horrifying truth. Tanya had been missing for a decade. The stark contrast between the clean and put-together Tanya they knew from the deli and the years of abuse she had endured filled Joe and Janet with a mixture of shock and sorrow. It was clear Tanya, as a survival tactic, had mastered the art of concealing the emotional and psychological turmoil she faced. Joe, though unsure of the exact steps, recognized the urgency of the situation. He contacted his son, Sean, a retired detective with the McKeesport Police Department. Sean, ironically, had been the one who investigated Tanya's disappearance 10 years prior. The case, with the missing person poster still displayed in his office, had never truly left him. Now, through a twist of fate, Tanya's story was back in his hands, offering a chance to finally bring justice and closure. A police car sent to retrieve Tanya pulled up to Thomas's house. Detective Sean, despite the 10 years that had passed, recognized her instantly. A flicker of the 14-year-old girl he'd seen in the missing person poster. With a mixture of relief and trepidation, Tanya entered the car, anxiously awaiting the reunion with her father. Finally, on March 21st, 2006, after years of torment, Tanya Nicole Kach was free. The reunion, clouded by a decade of trauma and manipulation, was marred by further pain. Her father's response, unfortunately, shifted the blame onto Tanya, painting her as responsible for her kidnapping. He claimed she understood the consequences of her actions when she ran away, effectively removing any responsibility from Thomas. In 2007, after his arrest, Thomas faced trial. During the proceedings, Tanya took the stand and directly addressed him while he was restrained. Her testimony stated that he had stolen her innocence and childhood, manipulating her into believing her family had abandoned her and nobody cared. She declared, "For 10 years, you controlled me." While Thomas apologized, he argued his actions were meant to prevent her from becoming homeless or worse. His defense team further claimed that if the authorities believed she was truly imprisoned or physically harmed, they would have pressed kidnapping or abuse charges. Thomas admitted guilt to multiple charges, including unlawful sexual relationships, inappropriate contact, and interfering with a minor's well-being. Despite initially facing charges potentially leading to life imprisonment, he received a 15-year sentence for a single charge and was released in 2022 as a registered offender. While Tanya pursued legal action against authorities for failing to intervene, her cases were ultimately dismissed. Tanya's story garnered significant attention in 2012. She published a book titled Memoir of a Milk Carton Kid, The Tanya Nicole Kach Story, which became a New York Times bestseller. Additionally, a film titled Captive the Slave Girl was released based on her experiences. However, not everyone was pleased with Tanya's narrative. Her parents filed a defamation lawsuit later that year, claiming the book portrayed them unfairly. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more crime stories. See you in the next episode.